This is the Straight Truth Podcast, biblical answers to difficult questions from a Christian worldview.
Pastor, we've dealt with situations here where there is a family or a person asking for advice from you about when it might be appropriate to ever withdraw medical treatment from someone so they can pass on. It's inevitable. We've had friends that have had, where they've had to make a decision for their parents on those in that regard. We've even had situations where there's young children in our church that where a parent has had to make that decision for them. Yeah. So in that context and in that situation, what's maybe some biblical wisdom you can provide to somebody who's going through that very difficult and trying decision to make?
You know, Josh, the sovereignty of God over all things is such a comforting doctrine. So helpful to know that all of our days were written down in God's book before we lived one of them. So there's a day for my being born, and there's a day for my death, and it was determined by God before I ever lived one day of my life. Yeah. And that helps me to remember that life and death is never in my hand, and it's never in a doctor's hand. It's in God's hand. So when I meet with situations where people are having to make practical decisions about life support, things of that nature, I just want to first remind them that until Jesus comes again, we all have a day to die. So, and for the believer, of course, it's just a portal into the presence of God. For the unbeliever, it's tragic. For the believer, it's actually a day of sadness for us who love the person, will be separated from them for a while, but it's a day of great rejoicing for them. Mm-hmm. So that's one truth that I just want to help people understand. You don't have to feel guilty, like somehow you're in control of their living and dying. You're not. God is in control. Second, that same sovereign God placed us in an era of living that most of humanity never experienced. I had a doctor once tell me that, basically we can keep anybody alive physically, for as long as we need to. Wow. Doesn't mean they're there.
Right.
But you can keep through oxygen and heart pumping mechanisms and all sorts of things, you can keep the house, the earthly house, present on a table. What I'm saying is, we sometimes are facing decisions that past generations wouldn't have even faced. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we have to feel guilty when we turn a person over to natural processes. Mm-hmm. Right? If we unplug the machine and now the body's going to run the course that God originally ordained after the fall for death to look like, we don't have to feel guilty about that. So that's the second thought. Mm-hmm. Third thought, there have been advancements in modern medicine. So if there is hope for a recovery, I don't have to feel guilty either about saying, no, I want to leave this for a while and see what happens. And I think if we have all three of those things in our mind at the same time, I'm not in control of life and death, God is. This is a situation past generations would not have faced anyway, so I don't have to feel guilty if I let the person go. There have been advancements in modern medicine, so I don't have to feel guilty if I want to see if there's a way to see them recover. Somehow that makes the decision less intense. I think it's good if people can make their wishes known before their loved ones face that decision. Mm-hmm. Then I don't have to feel guilty about honoring their wishes. Mm-hmm. If someone says to me, if one of my loved ones were to say to me, if anything ever happens, don't resuscitate me. Yeah. Or, okay, then the decision's been made. Mm-hmm. I think those sorts of things help us. So I wish there was a hard, fast rule for each of these situations. Mm-hmm. There's not. We need the Spirit of God. Mm-hmm. We need good, sound judgment. But I think those truths do help us. Mm-hmm. Because I think people feel guilty, like somehow they're in control of the living and the dying of their loved one. You're not.
No.
You're not. Mm-hmm. So just make the best decision you know to make in the moment, and then leave it with the Lord, and He knows your heart. And at that point, you can rest in His good care of this person. There have been people taking off life support who survive unexpectedly, and God does that. He can keep them alive if that's what He means to do. Mm-hmm. At the same time, He works through medicine, so we don't have to feel guilty if we choose to take advantage of that and say, you know what, if you took them off life support right now, they would perish. But we have this opportunity, this window of opportunity to see them recover. You don't have to feel guilty about taking advantage of that either. Mm-hmm. So listen to the doctors, get good medical advice, but keep those truths of God's Word in your mind as you do.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Straight Truth Podcast. Now, Straight Truth is listener supported. So if you'd like to find out ways how you can help us to continue to produce this podcast, you can go to our website and find out ways to do that, straighttruth.net. At that website, you'll also find links to all of our previous episodes and our social media channels, so be sure to check it out. Straight Truth is a production of Walking in Grace Ministries, the preaching and teaching ministry of Pastor Richard Caldwell. For more information, go to walkingingrace.org.